I hit Brian a few times. He was bleeding from his mouth. I thought I knocked him out.
Where's Mario when you're doing this?
Like right in the doorway.
A missing person, a murder trial without a body, and one of the very first times that anyone was ever charged with murder by intimidation. Hello, true crimerers. This is another true crime in a short amount of time. That was weird. And this is the case of Brian Carrick. Viewer discretion is advised. Creepy. It was just a few days before Christmas in 2002 in the little town of Johnsburg, Illinois. Johnsburg is one of those quaint little family towns with a tiny population. Everyone there knew everyone's business, but it was a place where community meant a lot. And the community typically was always there for one another. Nestled somewhere in the heart of this town was a grocery store called Val's Grocery. The store was co-owned by the Cachero family. Many of the Cachero kids would work at the store, and another family that was prominent working at the store was the Carrick family. The Carrick family was very large. They actually had 14 kids. And a few of the older kids worked in various, departments there at the grocery store. The 11th of the 14 kids was Brian Carrick. By 2002, he is a 17-year-old high school student, and he had been working at Val's Grocery for the past 3 years or so. And it would be December 20th, 2002, when the town, described as the Mayberry of the Midwest, would be rocked by controversy and mystery. That evening, Brian was last seen by his father, William, and this was around 6:45 p.m. Brian was not scheduled to work at the grocery store that night, but he left the house at 6:45 to walk across the street to the store because their house literally was across the street, so it was a nice, easy way to get there. Brian would then walk across the parking lot where he saw one of his brothers getting carts, and the brother saw Brian walk into the store, and then he never saw his brother again. Brian was just going in there that night to ask one of his co-workers if they would be willing to switch shifts with him for a day coming up. Brian was described as a really good kid, good head on his shoulders, got good grades, didn't get into trouble. The following day, Brian's parents got a phone call from one of the Cacheros, one of the people who worked at the store, the manager, and said that Brian didn't show up for work and that he was very concerned because it was not like Brian to not show up. Brian was extremely reliable. And because the last time they had seen him was just the night before, they just assumed he had gone out and stayed out late, and then, he would... That's why they didn't notice that Brian wasn't actually home that night, because they trusted him, and they knew that he would just come home, and then he probably just went to bed, and so they just didn't think they just had crossed paths with him. When they got that call, Brian's mom went up to his room and went inside, and lo and behold, he wasn't in there. So his mom immediately reported him missing, and then police got involved pretty quickly. Police would go to the last known location where Brian was known to be, at Val's grocery store. They interviewed people. Some of them said, yeah, they saw him come into the store to switch shifts, but they don't know what happened to him. They didn't see him leave or anything. Didn't really think anything of it. They then went into the produce section of the store where Brian would sometimes work. They then went into the stockroom of the produce section, and it's there they saw something very concerning. Blood. Not just in one spot, in many, many locations. Not like full-on pools of blood. It was more like blood spatter. There was streaks of blood. There was like a fingerprint in blood, which would later be determined to be Brian's fingerprint. There was blood on boxes that they found in the compactor There was blood on the ground, on the shelves, on the floor. I mean, just everywhere. The police would collect samples of all this blood, and later on down the road, it would be determined and confirmed to be Brian Carrick's blood, the 17-year-old boy who is now missing. So they were really curious, how the hell did this happen? He is missing. Now we have blood. Where's Brian? What happened? The police somehow narrowed down their suspect list to a few of the stock boys who worked there. Two of those stock boys had criminal histories, like actual. One of them, whose name was his last name was Lamb, he had attempted murder before, and he had other various charges. The other stock boy had lesser charges than attempted murder, but had a criminal history. The third stock boy was actually one of the sons of the Casharo family, and his name was Mario Casharo. Again, it was his family that co-owned the store. Police didn't have any physical evidence connecting him, or really anyone, at that point to whatever this may be. We don't even know if it's a murder. We don't know. There's blood, not enough blood to suggest that the person is dead, but we do have a missing person, so really they just had hunches. They had suspicions, and this was just based on interviewing hundreds of people. I guess they surmised from those interviews that Mario must be responsible, but they couldn't do anything about it because they had no physical evidence. It should also be noted that Mario and his entire family were out there every day searching for Brian with the Carrick family, with the community. The community banded together and they started searching everywhere for this boy. They searched the store, top to bottom, left to right. They searched the entire area surrounding the store, the woods, everything. They never found anyone. But Mario and his family led the charge, along with the Carricks, to find him. The Casharo family also offered a ton of money as a reward for any information that would lead to this criminal who may have done something to Brian. In 2010, Mario Casharo was arrested by the police and charged with a charge that had never at that point ever been given to someone: murder by intimidation. Police came to this conclusion based on the witness statement of a man named Shane Lamb. Shane Lamb was one of the stock boys, who I mentioned earlier, who worked at the store, who was one of the three people that police had initially suspected. They interviewed him, and he said this.
I hit Brian a few times. He was bleeding from his mouth. I thought I knocked him out.
Where's Mario when you're doing this?
Like right in the doorway.
Shane Lamb, unbelievably, would be given immunity for involvement in this case. And I am baffled by this. I am very confused by this. But anyway, he said in his statement that Mario was part of drug dealings that were going on in this store, like serious drug dealing. Brian Carrick, according to Mr. Lamb, was involved in this in terms of purchasing drugs. But I guess he wasn't paying up, allegedly. And allegedly, Mario didn't like that. Mario wanted him to be taken care of if he wasn't going to pay for his drugs. By the way, it would be kind of revealed that, like, Mario, like a lot of people his age, he had purchased pot before and smoked it with his friends. They kind of sold it amongst each other, but there was never any proof or evidence of an actual drug operation going on, which is what Shane Lamb was basically trying to describe as going on. So Shane Lamb had gotten into work that night, and Mario stopped him and said, "Hey, Brian's in the back. You know, like, Brian's back there. He hasn't paid up. So let's do something about it." So he's basically alleging that Mario told him to rough up Brian. Shane Lamb literally admits to punching Brian several times, and he even said the last blow rendered Brian unconscious. We have proof that there was blood spatter in the produce stockroom, that there was, which would indicate exactly what he's saying, that there was a lot of punches being thrown. The spatter would kind of go along with punches and blood kind of coming from that. So that's lining up. And Shane Lamb's admitting he is the one to physically assault him. But now he's bringing in Mario to suggest that he organized this, that he hired the hit, so to speak. What Shane Lamb says is that after Brian fell to the ground unconscious, he says he doesn't know what happened to him after that. He says that Mario said, all right, go ahead and leave. I'll take care of the rest. Keep in mind, police, even with this so-called testimony, have no physical proof of this drug operation. They have no physical proof that Mario had anything to do with this murder, possible murder. They had nothing to link Mario to it at all, except from Shane Lamb, who is a convicted criminal who had attempted murder in his past. They're relying on his word. And that was all that they needed. So therefore, Mario was arrested and charged with murder by intimidation, suggesting that he wasn't the one to actually murder Brian, but he hired it. He wanted him to be intimidated, and then he got murdered that way. Okay. Shane Lamb never held responsible for the physical assault that he admitted to doing because he was given immunity. I'm still baffled by this. So Mario Casciaro goes on trial. That trial ends in a mistrial. He goes on trial a second time. This time, unbelievably, with no evidence, with only the testimony of a known convicted criminal, he is convicted of murder by intimidation, and he is sentenced to 26 years in prison. Mario Casciaro, before all this, I should say, was always seen as a super well-behaved, good young man who never got in trouble. He had zero criminal history. He never got in any kind of trouble. He was well-respected. He was well-liked. Just a good kid, good guy, just a good person. And then he just sort of got thrown into this. He was now facing the next 26 years of his life in prison for something no one can prove he did or had any actual involvement in. Was he there that night? Yes, he was there at the store that night, along with a whole bunch of other stock boys. The second stock boy involved in this, potentially, he, by many, was considered to be, and I think even Mario said that he believes that this stock boy was the one to actually have done something to Brian. That stock boy, however, has since died of a drug overdose. Again, he also had a criminal history. But anyway, before his trial and arrest and all that, like Mario had gone to school, he had gotten his degree, he was well on his way to eventually taking over the store, and not just one store, but multiple stores, and all of that was taken away. And then sometime before 2015, Shane Lamb recanted his entire statement. He said he flat out lied about all of it. Mario Casciaro appealed his conviction because his entire conviction really rested on a now, first of all, on the word of a convicted felon, but also now a person who's stating he lied to the courts, that he lied on the stand, that he committed perjury. And the appeals court reversed the conviction, and Mario Casciaro was set free. The appellate court said in their ruling that no reasonable juror could have found him guilty based solely on the evidence that was presented at trial. And by the way, he was represented during his appeal process by the legal true queen of the Seven Kingdoms, Kathleen Zellner. We all know her from the Stephen Avery case because she's his lawyer too right now. And it's actually kind of cool because Mario Casciaro would later go on to law school, and he is now himself a lawyer. I, for one, just don't see it. I don't see any evidence supporting that he did it. I just don't. And I don't know what's happening to Shane Lamb now. He hasn't been charged with anything. He was given immunity. I don't know if that's been taken back or rescinded because he admitted to lying. Shane Lamb, he said that the police and the prosecution set up the whole thing, that they made him lie. I don't know if that's true. Could be. Don't know. I mean, who knows? He may not have anything to do with it. I don't... To this day, unfortunately, both of Brian's parents have since passed away, never knowing what happened to their son. His body has still never been found, and this case remains a mystery. But surely somewhere, someone out there knows the truth, and perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information about the murder, probably, or the missing persons case of Brian Carrick, please contact the Johnsburg police. You can also reach out to the FBI because they were involved in this case as well. You can always report any information anonymously. But that is it for this video. True crime, a rooney dooney 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 ding dong 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 dongs dongs. I hope you found it interesting. But yeah, that's it for today's video. So this is probably a longer short time true crime, so I kind of lied. I apologize. Until the next video, true crime maroonies. Always remember to spade and neuter yourself.